The USV Endeavour glided silently through space, its white hull gleaming in the sun's harsh glare. Inside the shuttle's cockpit, Commander Eric Dawson sat in the pilot's seat, fingers dancing across the console, as the sleek form of Sentinel Station grew on the screen ahead. A lattice work of solar panels and cylindrical modules stretched across the starscape, a testament to international cooperation, and the latest symbol of humanity's determination to colonize the heavens.
Approach vector confirmed. Docking in T-minus 10 minutes.
Copy that, Dawson replied calmly, eyes scanning readouts in front of him. He was not alone. Floating in the cockpit's cramped space was Dr. Maria Chan, an accomplished botanist whose life's work had helped pioneer hydroponic agriculture in zero gravity. She was gripping the back of Dawson's seat, face alight with a mix of excitement and nerves. "First time up?" Dawson asked, with a knowing smile. Chan exhaled, laughing nervously. "I've designed every square metre of those hydroponic bays. Just never thought I'd be the one sent to fix them." "Guess all must have already fucked up then," Dawson joked. Drifting nearby was Dr. Arjun Patel, a molecular biologist with sharp features and an intense gaze, glancing up from a tablet. Not to forget, we're also sitting on a potential biological mystery, he murmured. "That spore sample?" Chan asked. Patel nodded. "Contaminated one of the mycelium samples last week. They thought it was just some mould contaminated from another sample. But the sequencing results are strange. I'm running the final scans now. Let's just hope it's not the cause of the equipment failure," Dawson responded. Patel smiled faintly, eyes gleaming. "Yeah, but stranger things have happened in space." Patel and Chan returned to their seats and prepared for docking. "USV Endeavour, this is Sentinel Control. You're cleared for final approach," came a voice through the comms. "Roger that, Control. Beginning docking sequence," Dawson responded. Dawson's practiced hands guided the shuttle towards the station's airlock. The magnetic clamps engaged with a deep metallic clunk, and the docking seals hissed as the atmosphere equalized. "Welcome aboard," said Captain Alina Rivas, a seasoned commander with still grey hair and a hard-earned reputation for being a hard-ass. Floating beside her were Sam Carter, the station's chief engineer, Dr. Lena Volkov, the chief medical officer, and Kevin Shaw, a young lab tech. "Good to have you, Commander Dawson," Rivas greeted warmly. "We're running short-staffed since the equipment failure. Your help is more than welcome." Dawson shook her hand firmly. "Let's get things up and running again, Captain." She smiled and nodded in agreement. Introductions passed in the cramped space. "Let's get you settled in first," stated Rivas. She led the group through the surprisingly cramped modules filled with equipment and computers which lined the walls of the station. "Over here to our left is the sleeping quarters. You'll have the 3 pods over in that back corner. Then over here is the galley, where we eat. Anything else you'd like to know or need?" Patel asked. "Can I see the labs?" "Certainly." She gestured to Shaw, who led Patel to the labs. "Anything else?" "What's for dinner?" eagerly asked Dawson. Over a brief meal in the galley, Chan and Dawson struck up an easy friendship, swapping stories of home. She of her young son back on the California station, and him of life back on Earth and his sailing trips on the Atlantic. They even moved on to a first-name basis. The following day, in Hydroponics Bay 3, Eric and Maria suited up and entered the climate control chamber. Rows of verdant plants floated in nutrient solution tanks, many wilting or yellowed from the system's failure. Maria watched them in pity as they both drifted by them. "Looks like a clogged oxygenator valve," Eric diagnosed, floating deeper into the machinery. Maria monitored readouts on her wrist display. "This could take a while." "Then we should get started," Eric replied, determined. They worked for hours, stripped to their undersuits in the humid compartment. The shared labour fostered deeper connection, bantering, laughing at floating tools, exchanging stories of old missions, life living at other stations, and missed family dinners. "Ever miss her?" Maria asked. "Every damn day," Eric replied, pausing to wipe sweat from his brow. "But there's nowhere more beautiful than up here." By the next shift, Patel was missing. So was Kevin. Captain Rivas ordered a physical search of the station due to technical difficulties with the security systems. Eric finished final repairs with Maria. "We should check in," Maria said, concerned. "Right behind you." The corridors beyond hydroponics were eerily silent. Emergency lights flickered red. "What the hell?" Maria said. "This is Dawson. Rivas, do you read?" Eric called into his comms. There was silence. "Something's wrong," Maria whispered. They drifted cautiously through the station towards the command deck. At an intersection they found Sam Carter. Eyes milky. Something pulsated on his skin. "Sam?" Eric called. Sam's body twitched. His whole body shook violently, then he let out a primal scream. He propelled himself forward in the low gravity, moving with unnatural speed. Eric shoved Maria back and grappled with the engineer, barely forcing him away. "Shit, go back," he shouted. They fled as more crew members emerged, the milky eyes locking onto them, moving in eerie synchronization, as if they were a hive. "The escape pods," Maria gasped, floating next to Eric, breathless. Eric knew time was running out. He could feel the grey spreading beneath his skin, symptoms flaring. "We need to split up," he told Maria. "We'll double our chances." "Eric, no." "No argument, just go." She gave him one last look before entering Pod 1. "See you back on Earth," she said solemnly. Eric smiled and nodded, knowing deep down this would be the last person he will ever see. Maria gave a final desperate glance before parting ways. Eric then climbed into Pod 2 and strapped himself in, breath ragged. His vision blurred, thoughts dimming, beneath the spreading infection. Trajectory altered, he whispered through gritted teeth into his compiece. "Take us to Mars." He felt a dull clunk reverberate through the pod. He looked to his left through the viewport. He saw Maria's pod drifting away, towards home. "Stay safe," he whispered. He pressed the launch button just as his final breath caught in his throat. He then began to convulse violently as the fungal tendrils crawled their way up his windpipe and growths burst from his spine. Then, the agonizing darkness took him. After Maria finished the safety checks, she watched through a viewport to her right and watched as Eric fumbled about with his restraints. Satisfied he was ready to go, she spoke shakily into her comms. "Take us home." A dull clunk echoed through the pod, which made her jump. She opened her tablet to try and ease her mind. She decided to try and access the camera feeds to see if anyone was still alive. Outside the escape pod bay, there was motionless bodies floating, just watching the doors, as if waiting for them. An icy shiver went down her spine. She decided to backtrack to try and find what caused it. She eventually stumbled across the camera feeds in Lab 2. She thought the cameras were down. That's what they were told. The first video feed was from camera 4 in Lab 2, which dated back to the day they arrived. The camera sat in the back corner, angled downwards towards Kevin Shaw's desk. Patel and Shaw reviewed the latest spore sequencing results. On the hollow screen, an impossible pattern emerged. "Triple helix," Patel whispered. "It's alien." He trailed off. Shaw leaned closer, eyes wide. "You think it came from the asteroid samples?" "No, this must have piggybacked on the shuttle hull from last month's delivery or something. Potentially cross-contaminating equipment during the transfer." Patel's heart pounded. Not with fear, but scientific hunger. "Prepare the test rats," he said softly. Shaw hesitated. "Shouldn't we clear this with Captain Rivas?" "There's no time," Patel said. "This could revolutionize medicine. We could be the modern age Alexander Flemings." His eyes gleaming with excitement and wonder. The video feed ended as they both hurried out the room. The next video played automatically. It was from camera 1 in Lab 3. Patel's experiment had escalated. Along the side of the lab was rows of perspex glass cages, around 20 of them, housing rats floating inside. The first rat was exposed to what appeared to be aerosolized spores. It began convulsing violently after the 2-hour mark. Grey and yellow filaments erupted from its skin, and it began hastily gnawing and scratching at the cage walls with unnatural strength and speed. It appears to be a cordyceps analogue, but far more aggressive, Patel recorded feverishly. Shaw watched on in horror. "We have to stop this. This is dangerous. It's getting out of hand." Patel ignored him, eyes wild. "Think of the possibilities. Neural enhancement, regenerative medicine, immortality," he shouted, waving his arms about. He turned his back to the terrified Shaw and leaned over the chamber. A faint hiss escaped, a hairline crack in the containment glass. Patel began coughing, which raised in intensity. "Patel?" Shaw asked, alarmed. Patel's hands trembled. Grey blotches spread across his veins. He turned to Kevin, eyes turning a milky white. "Help me," he rasped, as blood and spittle flew from his mouth, forming droplets in the air. But already the spores had taken a hold. Maria stared at the frozen screen, her face frozen in terror. The shuttle then began to shake, which rapidly increased in intensity as she began plummeting through the upper atmosphere, and flames slowly engulfed the outside of the pod. In the rolling fields of rural Kansas, Farmer Tom Briggs worked beneath the early dawn sky. An orange flicker caught his eye, a parachute descending into the distant woods. "What the hell?" he muttered, grabbing his flashlight and his shotgun. "It better not be them commie bastards again," he muttered to himself. He trekked through the forest. Eventually, he got to the pod, which lay open amid broken branches, its interior smeared in crimson. "Jesus," he whispered, covering his face, bile rising. "What the fuck happened? Did a bear get here first or something?" A soft rustle sounded behind him. He spun around wildly with his gun raised, only to be greeted by a squirrel perched innocently on a tree stump, watching him with little beady eyes. "Well, hey there, little fella, what are you up to?" Tom began. The squirrel then began convulsing violently, limbs twitching as grey filaments burst from its skin. Tom started walking backwards slowly, terrified. It screamed, a chittering, unearthly sound, then launched itself at him, sinking its teeth and claws into his face. Tom's terrified screams echoed throughout the woods as crows in a neighbouring field took off into an otherwise peaceful morning sky. The research camp buzzes with activity, despite the permanent night cloaking the region. The March equinox. Floodlights mounted on steel poles outside the temporary research station cast long, ghostly shadows across the glistening ice and snow. Inside, the echo of conversation and soft humming of equipment punctuate the warm air. "This section right here," says Ellie, a glaciologist with sharp eyes and a worn parka, tapping her pen against a long cylindrical core sample lit up on the examination table. "See the difference in isotopic layering on the chart? That tells us this ice is at least 2.9 to 3.1 million years old. Look at the methane bubbles. The atmospheric composition is practically ancient." Across the table, Dr. Perrin, paleoclimatologist with thick-rimmed glasses and wind-burned cheeks, leans in. "That correlates with the mid-Pliocene warm period. Exactly what we came here to study." "You're right," Ellie nods, smiling faintly. "This is worth more than gold." Outside, 100 metres from the main camp, a smaller group huddles around the new advanced drill station. Red warning lights blink as the winch system comes to life over the 3.5 kilometre deep borehole, pulling up another long, pristine core. "Core's coming up," shouts Mason, the group's mechanic, wiping his oil-stained gloves against his jacket. He looks over at Dr. Core, one of the logistics experts. "Get ready, Doctor. This might be the deepest one yet." After the core breaches the surface, it's carefully laid out and cut into smaller sections. Each is then transferred into an insulated storage tube. Gustav, the drilling team lead, and the other logistics expert, inspects each segment with awe. Near the bottom section, something dark disrupts the otherwise perfect banding of ancient ice. "The hell is that?" he mutters, kneeling down. "That's not sediment, that's..." He trails off. The group crowds round. Inside the darkened ice is the unmistakable outline of a large insectoid shape, about the size of a large rat, twisted and still. Frozen next to it is what appears to be a clutch of eggs. "Holy shit, is that a mosquito?" Mason questions. "It can't be, not at that size, and not this far back. This thing must be prehistoric," Dr. Core says, after joining them. Her voice is hushed with wonder. Everyone is stunned into silence. Hours later, back at the lab inside the base, the section containing the strange creature is carefully removed from its tube, and a small section is removed off the top of the sample, ensuring to avoid damaging the apparent insect. Tests confirm the sample is 3 million years old. Ellie films the process on her phone, eyes gleaming with curiosity. Later, she sits in the mess hall with Mason. "It's a mosquito," she says again, as if saying it aloud will make it make any sense. A giant mosquito with a barbed tail. I mean, what if it's not even a mosquito? What if it's something new? Mason shrugs. My work is drills and machinery, not bugs, but it freaks me out. Those eggs looked almost fresh. Dinner is quiet. Excitement has given away to weariness. The team eventually heads to bed, leaving the lab in near darkness. At around 1:15 AM, Dr. Perrin stirs. Restless, he walks to the lab. The insect's dark form lingers inside the ice block in the freezer. He glances over his shoulder. No one's around. With careful movements, he wheels over a heat lamp. Just to melt the surface, he tells himself. Just enough to study it closer. He flips a switch. The ice begins to melt. Steam curls around the chamber. Perrin makes himself a decaf coffee whilst he waits, and takes a seat, his back to the thawing sample. Some time passes by whilst he's distracted by his phone. That's when he hears it. A crack, followed by some faint movement. He slowly stood up from his feet and glanced over his shoulder. His mug crashes to the floor. The buzzing fills the air. A few moments later, Ellie wakes from a dream of sleep, parched. She walks to the lab for some water and maybe something to eat. As she rounds the corner, she notices a broken mug on the floor, coffee spreading across the metal in a brown smear. A puddle of water glistens in front of a heat lamp still glowing red. What the hell? She mutters to herself. She searches the lab and checks the sleeping quarters. Perrin's bunk is empty. Confused and unnerved, she tries to wake Mason, but to no avail. So she woke up Dr. Talia and Gustav. They searched the base. Nothing. No gear missing. Wrapped in winter gear, Ellie, Gustav and Talia head outside. The air is still and tense. The eternal night seems even darker now. Using their torches, they find bare footprints trailing off into the snow, leading behind the station. You went barefoot in this cold? Talia asks, horrified. No boots? Nothing. Just whatever he was wearing last. Gustav mutters. What has gotten into him? They follow the prints. Behind the base, they hear some noise. As they get closer, they find Perrin kneeling in the snow, shirtless, digging frantically in the snow with bleeding hands. Gustav shouts to Perrin, "Hey man, you okay?" As he steps closer, he aimed his torch at the back of Perrin's head. They all freeze. The torch illuminated a large crack at the base of Perrin's skull, and relatively fresh crimson glistening across his bare upper back. Talia and Ellie both gasp. Then Talia hunches forward and vomits into the snow. Perrin suddenly stopped digging and bolted upright, suddenly aware of the trio's presence. He slowly turned his head to look over his shoulder, eyes locking onto Talia. Suddenly, Perrin shrieks and lunges, eyes wild and mouth foaming. Gustav and Ellie stagger back as Talia tries to calm him down. Perrin, stop, it's us. But he tackles her, slamming her head repeatedly into the snow, and quickly retreating, dragging her back towards the hole. Talia! Ellie screams. Gustav rushes over, tackling Perrin off of her. Ellie's vision blurs. as her lungs tighten and breaths increase. She bolts, panic gripping her chest, and runs through the dark back into the camp. She bursts through the main door and collapses by the wall, gasping in ragged breaths. "Someone, help!" a voice calls. The others rush in. "Give her space," Mason says, appearing beside her. He kneels down and hands her inhaler. She breathes in, allowing the chemicals to relax her throat and helping her slowly calm down. He attacked her. He's gone feral. They need help. Quick." Before anyone can respond, the door slams open. Perrin, Talia and Gustav, all wild-eyed, snarling and covered in blood, charge inside. Chaos erupts in the entryway. Mason grabs a fire extinguisher and bashes it into Gustav, the biggest threat of the three. Bones crunch. Blood sprays everywhere. The crazed Gustav starts slashing about, dazed. Mason raises the extinguisher again. He brought it down swiftly on Gustav's head. His body then dropped limp onto Ellie. The others, screeching like animals, drag 3 of the screaming researchers out the door. "No!" Ellie screams, as Mason drags her away from the door. Mason helps her to her feet. She's trembling violently. The remainder of the group seals the door, dragging the injured to the medbay. Makeshift weapons are formed from tools, pipes, and sharpened utensils and are passed around. Mason found the emergency satellite phone and dialed. "We need evac," Mason says. 3 went nuts and attacked the team. 3 others have been taken.
"Okay, we'll be there by 700.
replies the ship's captain. "We've got around 8 hours then," Ellie whispers to herself, in defeat. The group gather supplies, praying no one's contaminated them with whatever has caused these 3 to go feral. Ellie explains in more detail to the group about what she saw, and they discuss the possibility of some sort of virus. 3 hours pass. Ellie checks her watch. 4:07 AM. A few moments later, the lights go out. Darkness envelops the interior of the station. "Shit," Mason states. "That means we have lost the heating too. We all need to wrap up quick." They wrap themselves in their winter gear and huddle together as the temperature plummets. Over the course of around 30 minutes, the group heard thumps beneath the station floor, as if those outside were testing for weaknesses. Another hour passed. Ellie gets up to use the bathroom. She finds the door is ajar. A faint dripping echoes from within. Scissors in hand, she prepares herself and slowly pushes the door open. A large hole is melting through the floor, with the liquid dripping into the snow, letting out a hissing sound. Something acidic is eating away at the metal. Fear washes over her. She turns to alert the others, when screams erupt behind her from the lab. She runs back. 2 infected, Talia and Hiroshi, are attacking the crew, screeching and behaving like rabid animals. Ellie charges in with the scissors raised. She lunges at the closest infected, Hiroshi, tackling him to the ground. While she pinned him with a body weight, he floundered about trying to free himself from his assailant. Mid-slash, she notices a small crack at the base of Hiroshi's skull, similar to that on Perrin's. She swings down hard with the scissors, which went through the clack with a sickening squelch. The infected went limp. Ellie yells, "Go for the base of the skull!" The other infected freezes, seemingly understanding, and then bolts. He drops to all fours near the bathroom and scuttles through the hole. Ellie watches the bathroom as the adrenaline starts to wear off, highlighting the tightening of her throat. She starts to breathe in shallow, raspy breaths. She reached for her inhaler. It's running low, she notices, as she lets the chemicals work their magic. Mason does a quick head count and notices another person has gone missing. "There's a hole in the bathroom. We need to block it off," Ellie states, through shaky breaths, whilst climbing off the body. Before they can get a bearing of the situation, the missing person, now infected, plus 2 others, crawl back through the hole, screeching. Ellie panics as she still can't breathe properly, so she does the only thing she can think of. She runs. The infected swarm in. Mason stays, defending the injured, swinging left and right as Ellie flees. She dodges past the injured and runs outside the main door and straight to the snowplow truck, the only place she can think of. Buzzing sounds follow her as she stumbles through the snow. She climbs in, slamming the door behind her. Mosquitoes slam into the windshield and driver's side window. She watches in horror as they circle the truck, trying to find a way in. Then, a scream. Her attention is drawn back to the camp. Dr. Walker runs from the base, covered in blood and scratches. The insects see this and give chase. She whimpers to herself as she stumbles through the snow towards the truck, as the mosquitoes begin their assault, slashing at her face and arms as she floundered about trying to defend herself. Then she tripped and fell face first into the snow. Before she could push herself back up, the mosquito seized the opportunity and landed on her upper back. It reared back its barbed tail and sunk it deep into the base of Walker's skull, causing her body to jolt. Her body began spasming. Unbothered, the mosquito then proceeded to squeeze itself through the small opening as blood sprayed into the air, and Walker's eyes rolled backwards. Once it had climbed all the way in, the body went still. Suddenly it rolled over and bolted upright into a sitting position. It turns and stares right at the truck, right at Ellie. Ellie then began fumbling with the lock. The infected then stood up and ran for the truck, slamming into the driver's side door, shaking the truck violently. It stood up and began hammering on the glass. Just as the crack began to emerge, a bright red flash blinds Ellie for a brief moment. A flare embeds itself in the back of Walker's skull. The infected convulsed and collapsed backwards into the snow. A figure holding a road flare stands by the entrance to the station, with a signal pistol raised in his other hand. It's Mason. He begins limping to the truck. To Ellie's surprise, the mosquitoes swarm him, but they remain at bay as he swings a road flare at them. As he gets to the truck, the mosquitoes retreat. She quickly unlocks the door and lets him in. "You okay?" she asks, worried. "Barely. They took the others. I had to kill 3 of them. One of the team ran out. I thought it was you," he responded. He's pale and still bleeding. They plan their escape and check the fuel gauge. They have just enough to reach Nico Bay. They are suddenly interrupted by footsteps. They look over to see two of the infected walking towards the truck. But to both of their surprise, the infected don't attack. Instead, they reach down and grab Walker's body and begin dragging her back the way they came and disappeared beyond the station. I think they're nesting, Mason mutters. He insists on killing them. They're so close to safety, but he can't let it go. Not with those things still alive out there. They can't let the infected, or those mosquitoes, survive, yet alone follow them. He's bleeding, exhausted, and barely conscious, but his mind is set. We end it now, he growls, reloading the flare gun and readying another road flare. We can't risk them getting back, or getting to any of the other stations. Ellie grabs his arm. You're hurt, Mason. You won't make it 10 feet. I'll be fine. Mason, please. Ellie begs. It'll be okay, he reassures. Before she can finish arguing, he unlocks the door and pulls himself back out into the cold. Armed with 2 signal flares and a single road flare clutched tight in his shaking hand, Mason lit the road flare and began limping his way through the snow. Ellie sits with her face against the window, watching him as he trekked through the snow, following the fading footprints behind the station. The soft red glow of his flare, the only thing she can see. She watched as the glow of the flare moved behind the station and suddenly stopped halfway. Then it suddenly faded. Dread washed over her. A sudden distant boom ruptures the night. Followed by a chorus of shrill, insectile screeches. Something behind the station is on fire. Another flash is seen, as a flare is fired presumably into the nest. A brief moment passes. Then another flare is launched high into the sky, to Ellie's confusion. A few moments later, Mason reappears in the glowing orange light. He's staggering, both arms wrapped tightly around his stomach. Ellie rushes out to him, slipping under his arm as he nearly collapses. They stumble back toward the truck and climb inside. She turns on the engine and floors it. In the rearview mirror, she sees one of the infected crew engulfed in flames. Whoever it was collapses mid-run, shaking violently as they burn in the snow. You should have left me, Mason mutters. I couldn't, she replies, voice barely holding steady. He nods, guilt flickering behind his glassy eyes. Sorry. What the fuck happened? She asked. Mason leaned back in his seat, jaw clenched. I smelt methane near the nest. I threw the flare. Next thing you know, it all went up. Then the shrieking started. Got one of them with my flare pistol as they tried to escape, but another was hiding under the base. He bit down on my stomach and slashed at my chest. She looks him over, concerned. By 6:50 AM, the white horizon gives way to reveal Nico Harbour and the Southern Ocean. The sea is a glimmer of pale silver. A shadow of a ship waits at the edge of the harbour. They board quickly, both shaking, half frozen. The crew listens to their insane story, shocked but act fast anyway. Mason is taken below deck for treatment. Ellie follows, hovering beside him, until the captain gently pulls her away. 60 stitches later, they both collapse into bunks in the sleeping quarters. Mason's sleep is restless. He's even paler now, drenched in sweat, potentially from a blood infection. His breath is shallow. Fever grips him like a claw. Ellie watches over him, eyelids heavy, fighting sleep. Eventually, she dozes off for what could only have been a few seconds, which is then interrupted by a violent wet tearing. The sound cuts through the hum of the engines like a razor. Her eyes snap open. She slowly turns her head. Mason lies still, mouth agape, and his eyes glazed over. His abdomen pulses once, which draws her attention. Something shifts beneath his jacket. Her heart sinks, then a short buzz. Ellie can't move. She's frozen, heart slamming in her chest. From under his jacket, something moves at its base. A barbed chitinous tail unfurls, twitching in the cold air. They gutted us after the administration changed hands. Budget cuts, furloughs, station closures. They said we had to be efficient. I remember the day the memo came through. An email with a subject line, Government Efficiency Plan. A real pretty way to say, you're on your own. Back then, I was stationed at Clearwater National Forest, a sprawling 1.8 million acre chunk of wilderness in northern Idaho. My name is Thomas Ellison. I've been a park ranger for 22 years. I've walked more of this forest than most folks have ever driven in a lifetime. I could track a person or animal for miles without being detected. I could tell you the difference between cougar scat and a coyote's just by the smell. And I never, not once, lost a hiker. But I've never been more afraid than I am now. In the early years, the job was simple. Protect the forest, help lost hikers, keep the place clean. I used to work out of Fire Tower 9, the highest point in the region. Used to watch the stars from that tower, drink coffee through bitter winters, and keep logs of all the wildlife sightings. The team was solid back then. 5 full-time rangers and a pair of seasonal interns. I remember Sarah Jennings, fresh out of forestry school. Always kept her boots clean, like the dirt was a plague. She was a quick learner though. We once tracked a bear together with a broken paw for 3 miles, just to make sure it wasn't dragging itself towards any populated areas. That was the job. Simple, but exhausting. There was also Rick Morales, the old-timer before me. He retired in 2010, but he taught me most of what I know today, most of which I passed on to Sarah. Rick was the type of man who could skin a fish with a multi-tool and navigate the forest blindfolded. He told stories about strange sightings in the forest. I thought they were just tall tales back then. Always respect the land, Tommy, he told me once. It remembers, it doesn't forgive. Those words have stuck with me since. First they shut down Tower 9. Said that drones and satellites made lookouts obsolete. Then they reassigned Sarah and the others. Pretty soon, it was just me and Dave Mallory, covering thousands of acres. Dave and I had history. We served in the Corps together before we found peace in the trees. He took to this life the way ducks take to water. Calm, reliable. We covered from dawn to dusk, doing the job of 5 with the hands of 2. The trails got overgrown, markers disappeared. We submitted reports, pleas for help, for staff, for funding. They never got answered. This was when the first disappearances began. It was March when things started going sideways. A father and son from Spokane went missing near Broken Jaw Ridge. The dad was an army vet and an experienced camper. The weirder part? Their camp was intact. Tents zipped up, food sealed, gear untouched. No signs of struggle, just gone into thin air. We searched for 3 days. Helicopters, dogs, but nothing turned up. We chalked it up to an animal attack or a fall, until more reports kept coming in. The next month was a pair of climbers from Boise, then a solo backpacker from Oregon. By the start of June, 8 people went missing, all from different campsites, different trails, but all near the deeper northern woodlands. About 3 weeks in, we started hearing things. Screams that echo through the trees, strange lights in the sky, claw marks 10 feet up pine trunks, far larger than any bears or cougars. Then the signs appeared. One morning, I arrived at the ranger station to find new signs posted along the entrances of the less trafficked trails. Not from us though. No letterhead, no authorization. Just bold white signs with black lettering, adorned with bizarre symbols. There were rules, 7 of them. 1. Do not leave your tent after sundown under any circumstances. 2. If you hear a voice calling your name, don't respond. 3. Never take meat offered by a stranger, even if they look like someone you know. 4. Avoid mirrors and reflections after dusk. 5. If you see a second moon in the sky, hide immediately. 6. Fires must be extinguished by 7:14 p.m. 7. If you see a man with antlers, be polite and do not make eye contact. Do not go with him. I thought it was just a prank. Some bored conspiracy nut trying to scare off tourists. Until the disappearances tripled in just 1 week. I brought one of the signs back and showed it to Dave. You ever seen anything like this? I asked. He stared at it a long while. Back in Kandahar, he said slowly. We used to find these strung up with little charms in villages. Warnings apparently. Bit creepy. He wasn't wrong. We decided to leave the signs up and follow the rules anyway. We had nothing better to do, since it's quieter, and the rules were easy to follow anyway. Nothing ever came of it, for either of us. Yeah, weird things happened, but nothing out of the usual. It was the start of July when we got the call, about 3 missing college students. They drove down from Missoula to spend the long weekend hiking Ridge 12. They never checked out. I found their car parked in a lay-by. Inside were maps, a few empty water bottles, and a playlist of 2000's pop hits, still queued up on the dash. You know, the normal stuff. We tracked them 3 miles in. First we found the boot, then the shredded tent, the blood, the claw marks that tore through tree bark like it was paper. I called out, my voice echoing. Stella! Leela! John! Anyone? No answer, but I felt watched. The woods had gone still. No birds, no rustle, just a vacuum of sound. We searched for 2 days. Found scraps of clothing caught in tree limbs 20 feet off the ground. Eventually, I found a journal that ended with the words, "I saw it last night. It walks upright, like a man, but taller." Dave met me the next day. He'd brought Kim, a volunteer who knew these trails like the back of her own hand. She found a trail of meat, long bloody strips leading off a trail. I told her not to follow it, but she did anyway. I didn't risk following her. We found her notepad 2 days later. The final entry read, "It called me in my mother's voice. She's been dead for 10 years. But it knew our last conversation. It knew." Later that week, heavy fog settled over the entire Northern Valley like a blanket. I couldn't shake the smell. Iron and wet leaves. I stayed at the ranger station and decided to flip through some old reports to pass the time and to see if I can make any sense of what's been going on. One dated 1982 caught my eye. Unexplained howls at dusk. Found a deer carcass hung in some trees. Locals call it the Deer Man. Advised to avoid tower trails during new moon. Then another from 1996. Campers missing near Lost Creek. Found a blood trail ending at Old Burial Mound. Native elders warned of something ancient. They call it the Wendigo. I dug deeper. Wendigo, or Wendigo, a spirit of starvation and madness, consumes the flesh of men, said to be born of cannibalism and winter. The fog still lay thick at the start of this week. Dave and I were scouting near the old logging trail, whispering theories we didn't want to believe. "What if it's not an animal?" Dave asked. "You think it's people?" I responded. "Worse," he whispered. We suddenly heard movement up ahead. A figure stumbled out of the mist. Someone wearing a torn hiking jacket. Looking lost. Dave raised a hand. "Hey, you okay?" The figure turned. As we got closer, we realised its sheer height. It wasn't a man. It was impossibly tall, thin to the point its bones showed. Glowing yellow eyes sunken deep, and the antlers, black and jagged, like they were made of ash. Its mouth opened, and it smiled, if you could call it that. Then it moved. One swipe, and it took Dave off his feet. The next, it tore him in half, as if he was just a small, fragile twig. Guts spilling out and blood pooling on the damp soil. Dave's final agonising breaths was all that filled the air, other than the gushing blood. It stared deep into his eyes until his body finally gave in. Then what was left of him went limp. I stood frozen as it bent low and began eating him, ripping into his flesh like a starving animal, yanking a rib out like it was nothing, and began eating it like it were a candy cane, licking off some meat and then biting off chunks. After it began on another rib, my flight or fight finally kicked in. I ran. I ran for the only place left, the abandoned fire tower. I'm here now. The door is barred. My pistol is at my side. I only have 3 bullets left. I should have reloaded it before we set out earlier. I've been writing this as fast as I can. I lit a flare at the base of the tower, hoping it might keep it back. But the glow only seemed to amuse it. It keeps circling the tower. Sometimes I hear it whispering in Dave's voice. Other times, it scratches the windows, drawing symbols I don't recognise, ancient looking. If you find this, run and never return. The government has unleashed this beast. I fear there is many more out there. It's watching me from the window. I can hear it breathing. Long, slow breaths that rattle the windows. It's smiling. God help me.